Hey, so welcome to I don't know what I'm gonna call this. I might just I don't know, Cellarcast? Ooh, that would be slick. This is just a podcast that I have been thinking about doing just because sometimes there's things that I have thoughts about that I just kind of talk to myself about, and I don't really have a way to put it into a video, and it's usually like current things that I would sometimes make a rant video about if there was more that I had to say about it. But usually I just make the rant videos when I have something that my mind kind of goes places and it ends up being a bigger topic than maybe like the 5 minutes I would have to devote to something. I have no idea if that's how today's gonna go, but I do have some topics that I thought was interesting that I wanted to talk about. So the first the first news story, which is hours old, this headline that reads, Sega is reportedly turning Sonic the Hedgehog into a VTuber and wants to open up theme park. This well, nothing really shocks me anymore. Some things will probably shock me, but most things don't. This is quite a headline. So I want to preface this with the fact that it is not yet confirmed in the article itself, which comes from Silicon Era. Is it Silicon Era? I always kind of read it as Silicon Era because that's how they spell it. But this comes from the quote, or the info at least, comes from a Twitter user named Ria, or is it a Twitter user? Yeah, they probably have a. I'm assuming they have a Twitter, but they also have a website. Her name is Ryokutia 2089, and who is apparently, I guess, someone in Japan who has, according to this article, frequently been the first to post key information from physical publications such as Famitsu and Weekly Shonen Jump. So, if you are into, I guess, Japanese games or manga, then you might very well have read a leak from this guy. Or really not a leak, it just, there's a bit of a lag between translations coming out. So, the specific source of these statements is unknown. However, they will likely come from Famitsu's upcoming Sonic 30th Anniversary column, which also features interviews with the two men referring to Sega's art director Kazuyuki Hoshino and Takashi Iizuka, who is the current Sonic the Hedgehog producer. Hoshino, it releases on June 24th of this year, thank you. In it, Hoshino states that the team is working on a project to turn Sonic into a VTuber as part of a new streaming program. He hopes that fans will enjoy the new opportunity to, quote, communicate with Sonic in real time. Now, this is funny to me because, well, for anyone who doesn't know what a VTuber is, or only vaguely knows what it is from osmosis, I guess, a VTuber is basically, people are really bad at explaining what VTubers are, what I've found. VTuber is basically just anyone who is a content creator, namely streamers or people who make videos, although nowadays it's mostly streamers, who instead of showing a face cam to display themselves, they basically use a motion tracked avatar to represent themselves, and that avatar can be a 3D model or a live 2D model, which is basically just like an illustration which can be rigged to move. And you've probably seen it actually if you play a lot of like anime mobile games, because it's a good way to basically take a static piece of art and then give it some movement. So it's a way to get a little more bang for your buck if you're a mobile game developer with you don't have a budget to create big animated character arts or loading screens or menu art or something like that. I guess there's a conception that it's always like anime or anime girls specifically, but really it can be anything. You can literally just download like a program for your web. It'll connect to your webcam, and then it'll just motion track you to like, I think there's like default models and stuff. You could be like a dog. You could be like a Shiba Inu. You could be a little like pigeon. And so the prospect of the Sonic VTuber is interesting to me because it doesn't necessarily surprise me, because VTubers, if you weren't aware, it's only picked up very recently, like within the last year in the West. But in Japan, it's been popular since at least like 2017, I want to say. That's when, if anybody remembers Kizuna Ai, who was actually, she's where the term virtual YouTuber comes from, because so the idea with Kizuna Ai was she was like a full-on, there was like a big production where they had like a green screen, and it would be like a real actress in like a mocap suit, and she would basically make YouTube vlogs, but she was like an anime girl, and she was like a 3D model. And the whole premise of Kizuna Ai, she was kind of basically really the first of her kind of VTubing. Like there's some other ones earlier of like earlier examples that you could find of people using avatars to represent themselves, and it is different from like, you'll see people on YouTube using like still images to represent themselves, the rant sonas, if you will. VTubing is different in that it's actually like live motion captured. And so Kizuna Ai was kind of like the first one to really popularize it in its current form, as it's currently understood. And the reason it's called virtual YouTubing is because her whole premise of like her character was that she was a computer program. She was an advanced AI. Was like her character, and she was like created to make YouTube vlogs. And so all of her videos were very short, but they all had like kind of almost a surreal, very like Japanese style of humor. And so virtual YouTuber actually comes from the fact that she called herself a virtual YouTuber, because she was literally supposed to be a computer program. And so technically doesn't have any relation to, or very little relation to, the current understanding of VTubers, which can really be anything. They can be playing a character or have an inbuilt lore or not, and just be themselves using an avatar. But they're still called virtual YouTubers because of Kizuna Ai. It's kind of funny how terminology. I ate like 20 minutes ago or something. So I'm a little burpy. You'll have to excuse me. It's interesting how terminology kind of evolves over time based off of like an original context, and then it changes. There's a big debate with that right now in in the Smash community, now that Kazuya has been announced, and Smashers are calling him a Shoto, which is is really funny, because Shotokan Karate is like an actual school of martial arts, and it was used in Street Fighter 1, I think, in the manual, actually, just the US manual of Street Fighter 1. It was like a localization thing to describe Ryu and Ken's fighting styles, even though their fighting styles actually don't resemble Shotokan Karate at all. And apparently the like official association of Shotokan Karate asked Capcom to stop referring to it as such, because it wasn't representative of the actual art. And so I believe they changed it to now they practice I think it's called like Ansatsuken, which, if I understand correctly, just from my limited knowledge of Japanese, means like killing art, or like killing. Ansatsu has something to do with like killing or assassinating. And all of this is really funny because Shoto shortening of Shotokan. A Shoto is kind of an archetype in fighting games, but it has nothing to do with the actual, like, moves of Shotokan karate. Not in the sense that, like, Ryu and Ken, they do like the punches and they do the kicks and whatever. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with their fantasy super special moves. It's like Shoto has generally described characters who are based around, they're kind of like all-rounder characters who are based around having a projectile, would be like Ryu's Hadouken, the fireball, an uppercut, which is like not always invincible, but some kind of a reversal move to hit your opponent out of the air, an anti-air move, and the hurricane kick, which is just like a move that moves you forward. That's like the basic bare bones definition of a Shoto, of fireball, uppercut move, and some kind of move that moves you forward. And really has nothing to do with the actual Shotokan style of karate. But now it's just evolved to be a term that's used in the fighting game community. And then what's really funny is that because Smash is so divorced from, or kind of like separated, there's a little wall between them and the fighting game community, which I think has more to do with the fact that Smash never had an arcade scene, because it's not an arcade game. I think that has a lot to do with the cultural differences between the two scenes. So when like Ryu and Ken and Terry, first of all, Ryu gets added in Smash 4, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think, yeah, he was first in Smash 4, and then Ken was introduced in Ultimate. So Ryu gets put in, and he's a Shoto. But nobody really uses that term to describe him at that point, because he's just a Ryu. And then Ken gets added, and it's like, okay, well, now we need a little bit of a term to categorize these two characters who very clearly have a similar gameplay basis. They have very similar movesets, even though they're used in very different ways and have different kind of play styles with that moveset. And so the term Shoto was applied because it just makes sense, and it comes from the original games, and Ryu and Ken are both Shotos. And then Terry gets added in Ultimate, and Terry, even though KOF and Fatal Fury don't quite... even though they don't quite have a ton of relation to Street Fighter's terminology. Like, Shoto is a term that is very, like, inspired. When you see those characters in other games, like Jago from Killer Instinct, or actually Ryo from KOF, but KOF was a little after Street Fighter. And, like, when you see characters like that, they're inspired by that basic Shoto moveset. Terry really wasn't. He kind of is. He has some analogs to it, like he has the... He does have a projectile, although it travels along the ground, which is more of like an SNK kind of thing. They have their fireballs travel on the ground instead of being like airborne, I guess. He has that. He has like crack shoot, which moves him forward, and he doesn't really have like he has like the spinning upward kick, but that's like not quite really the same as like an uppercut reversal type move. I don't even know if it counts. I honestly don't know that much about KOF, so I don't know if it counts as a reversal. But, yeah, Terry really isn't that much of a Shoto, but in the context of Smash, the way his moveset was implemented there, he is kind of pretty similar to Ken and Ryu. Like, he has a projectile on his neutral B. He has a move that moves him forward, which is his, like... I know he has like a forward and back B, which is like kind of unique to him. And then he has the rising tackle, that's what it's called. And then he has like that's his up go move. And so to a Smash audience who isn't super familiar, or only has like, a passing surface level knowledge of King of Fighters and Fatal Fury and the SNK games, yeah, if you're just looking at the movesets, Terry, yeah, they're like all part of the same archetype. So you look at that and you're like, oh yeah, all the fighting game pro tags do that. And then there's also the very, very notable Smash specific thing of all of these characters have what's called auto turnaround, which is I don't play Smash, so I don't know how annoying it is, but once Kazuya was announced, a lot of them were complaining about another auto turnaround character. Oh god. I don't know how bad that really is. It seems like, I don't know, Smash players whine a lot. About a lot of stuff, so I don't know if it's just being blown out of proportion. But that is a notable mechanic that is exclusive to all the characters from traditional fighting games, or just, other fighting games that are in Smash. And so that's something that's actually worth creating an archetype around, because I can see how in a game like Smash that's very positional, very based around positioning, that would be very important that your character can automatically turn around and correct, and you can't whiff, or they have a mechanic that can prevent whiffing moves that another character might whiff if there's a cross up or something like that. So you take okay, Ryu, Ken, Terry, yeah, you can all group them into being Shotos because their movesets are kind of similar, and they all use command inputs as part of they have optional command inputs for part of their specials. So they have all these gameplay similarities, which do merit them being put into the same category, kind of. But then you have Kazuya, and Kazuya is the most extreme example of this, getting further from what a Shoto actually is, because Kazuya, Tekken doesn't have... Well, Tekken's a 3D fighting game. It has very little in common with something like Street Fighter or Fatal Fury, besides basic mechanics of the genre. But Tekken, in terms of play styles and how its characters fit into archetypes, is very, very different. And so Kazuya is part of his own archetype. There is a Mishima archetype in Tekken, which is him, Heihachi, and I don't know if Jin is still considered a Mishima style, because he, from what I understand, he kind of changes up his fighting style a lot from one game ever since Tekken 4 or 5, one of those. Whenever Devil Jin got added, because I do know that Devil Jin, I think, is he does have that Mishima play style. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a Tekken expert. But, there is, certain... Within the systems of Tekken, there is, a certain set of moves that was started in the original Tekken with Kazuya, and I don't remember if Heihachi is playable in Tekken 1. I don't think so. He isn't. He is starting with Tekken 2, at least. But that archetype comes from that character, from those characters. So Mishima style is, very particular, and he really doesn't have anything in common gameplay-wise with Ken or Ryu or Terry. But because... And and again, this is all very silly because we don't even actually know Kazuya's whole moveset. They're going to have the moveset showcase later on, and I don't know how they're going to fit all those moves into Kazuya. I'm very curious to see how he actually plays, how they implemented him. But without any knowledge of what his full moveset actually looks like, Smashers just immediately label him as a Shoto, which I think is interesting because the fact that they jump the gun means that they just assume that every fighting game character who has these similar qualities to the other fighting game characters in Smash, like auto turnaround and command inputs, which Kazuya will almost certainly have, they're all just Shotos. That's the term. And it's interesting because from a fighting game perspective, from the rest of the FGC, the fighting game community, that is an incorrect usage of the term. What's ironic is that Shoto itself is an incorrect usage of the term because it has nothing to do with actual Shotokan karate. So you have this weird evolution where Shotokan karate becomes this new thing that is referred to as Shoto in the FGC, and then Shoto characters are implemented into Smash, and then the term Shoto becomes a totally different thing there, because of the way that Smash functions, I guess. I don't know how to describe it, but like the way that their system mechanics work, they group together these characters, and it's the evolution of language, and they kind of like splitting off. It is really funny though. It does get under my nerves. It gets a little on my nerves. To see people who have only ever played like Smash as a fighting game, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's really funny to see them like upset over Kazuya's introduction and calling him a Shoto, because in the original context it's just wrong. I guess you could say the term is in an evolutionary period in their community right now, but it is wrong, and it's fun to clown on them. What's also really funny, disappointing I guess, is that how riled up people get over Smash characters that they've never heard of getting put into the game. I remember being like 8 years old, and the first ever Smash game I played was Brawl, and I actually did a count, because I was thinking about it when Kazuya got announced. I did a count. I counted up. I'm pretty sure that at the time that I played it, I had no idea who 50, maybe more than 50% of the Brawl roster was. Like, I didn't know what Ice Climbers was. I didn't know what Snake was from, or I didn't really have an idea of Zelda. I didn't own a console until I was like 10. I played it at a friend's house, and that was my introduction to a ton of characters. I didn't know who Captain Falcon was or any of these people. I didn't know who Olimar was. These are just like characters in this game. Oh, cool, Mario's here, and Sonic's here. Oh, that's cool. Oh, Pokemon. Yeah, so I just kind of like latched onto things that I knew about, and the rest of the characters were just like, oh, cool, I guess that's a thing. And it was cool because I got exposed to so many games that I just had no idea about, which is one of the great things about Smash, is that it celebrates the history of the medium in this really fun way. And so I have seen a few reactions from people who are like, well, I really don't know anything about Tekken. I don't really know who this character is, but it's cool that I'm finding out about it, which I think is probably the most positive reaction to have. I think the problem is that there's like a conflicting set of meanings that people will apply to what a spot in Smash kind of means, because like for sometimes, because it is like it depends, like what am I trying to say, what's the reason that a character gets into Smash, and it's different depending on the character. Like sometimes it's because they're a fan favorite. Sometimes it's because they're historically relevant, like Pac-Man and Mega Man. Sometimes it's because they want to promote a game with like the 8 Fire Emblem characters that are in Smash. And even going back to, I don't remember if like that Breath of Fire game Fire Emblem, the Fire Emblem game that Roy is from. I don't remember if that was out in the West or... It wasn't out in the West. I don't know if it was out in Japan at the time that Melee came out, but I'm pretty sure that was like... Actually, no, I don't think Fire Emblem was in the West when Melee came out. So, like, yeah, in a way, it was kind of a marketing thing that Roy and Marth were in there. So it does kind of go back and has a tradition, but that kind of, like, taints it a little bit, because it's like, it introduces a level of cynicism, like, why is Min Min in Smash? Do they just want to remind people that ARMS exists? So like you look at a character and there's kind of like this, you wonder about like, did they get paid off for this? Well, yeah, of course they did. Well, actually they might have paid to have the rights to the character. I actually have no idea. It's stupid to make any assumptions about why necessarily some characters were in and some characters were not in, because we don't know unless they state directly. But Kazuya being in Smash is totally because, well, one, Bandai Namco makes Smash. Nintendo publishes it, but it's a team from Bandai Namco that is led by Sakurai, who himself is not a member of Nintendo. He is contracted by them through his own company, Sora Limited. And So, like, that's one reason. Two is that Sakura is a huge fighting game fan. That's why Terry is in the game. Uh, and he's a huge, I'm assuming he's at least a fan of Tekken. Uh, and Tekken is a series with a ton of history. And even though I don't think there's any Tekken games on Nintendo consoles, like, Kazuya is a part of history, and he is important in his own right. It's very ironic that people complain about a fourth fighting game character being added to Smash when, like, how much of the roster is platformers and RPGs? Two of the previous Fighters Pass characters were from JRPGs, Joker and Hero, but people didn't complain about that. People complain that it was like a sword character, but like, I don't know. Smash players are weird. They're smelly. Anyway, Sonic becoming a VTuber. That's how he started. I thought that was funny. I wonder if it's going to be like, if anyone's ever seen those incredibly awkward live Simpsons episodes where they had like a similar, I don't know how exactly they did it. I don't think it was a live 2D thing, but it was something kind of similar where they actually had like, it was like Homer's taking calls. And it was incredibly awkward because it's all the awkwardness that comes from like talking over the phone with someone, but really magnified. Plus, one person's trying to do a character, where like I've seen a few clips from it of Homer talking over people, tripping over each other. Like one person starts talking, and then the other person starts talking, and all the fun. Awkward things that come from interacting with people where you can't actually read their body language. Like, things that just don't happen because, like, oh, I can see someone visually, they're preparing to speak through their body language or literally opening their mouth, which just doesn't come across over audio. I hope it's that awkward, or I hope it's cool. Sonic fans, they need some. They need something nice. I feel bad for them. It must be a little painful. I hope that it's either two ways. I hope it's really cool for them, or I hope it's really funny. As an alternate, I hope it's cool/funny. Or if it isn't, and it just ends up being, I hope it's not mediocre. That's the only thing I don't want. I hope that if it fails, I hope that it's like that Sonic 25th or 30th whatever anniversary. It would be the 25th because this is the 30th. 25th anniversary live stream. Go watch the Crobcat video on that. It's a trip. Anyway. Second news topic, Ubisoft. Oh boy. Ubisoft DRM makes it impossible to play all of Might and Magic 10. Still on sale anyway. This one comes to us from metro.co.uk, specifically their GC, the Game Central. So basically Might and Magic 10, which came out in 2014, and it's the 10th Might and Magic game, which is the classic kind of Western RPG series, first person, kind of, you could think of it as was it a predecessor to the Elder Scrolls? I don't remember which one came out first. But in that same like really early vein of like the first person fantasy RPGs. And so Might and Magic 10 came out in 2014 and had this funny little thing called digital rights management, which is everyone's favorite practice from around that time, which I'm glad has really slowed down. But yeah, it's funny to think about that even like 2014 is about 6-7 years ago. Even at that time, Man, publishers loved DRM. They always get into these little the big publishers will get into these. I don't really know where it comes from. They kind of invent these boogeymen that is gonna kill the games industry. Like, they used to say that not pirated, used games were gonna kill the games industry. Oh my god! And guess what didn't happen? Yeah, they're always like doomsaying something, usually so they can introduce some kind of dumb feature, so they can make more money. When they are the audience, they're the group in the industry that probably least needs to squeeze more money out. Anyway, getting back on topic, Might and Magic 10 Legacy. I don't know why it's called Legacy. I don't know if that's a subtitle. That's what it's listed as on Steam. So it's on Steam, and it had this DRM. And the DRM kicked in after the first chapter, the first act. And this is interesting because it's like the worst DRM practice, because you might not know this, but Might and Magic is not an online game. It's one of those where it's a single player, purely offline game, but you do need to be connected to the internet, or else you're pirating the game. You pirate, you criminal. You evil criminal. How dare you not have an internet connection right now at this very moment. So that is pretty obnoxious, and that's why the Xbox One got off to such a bad start, because they basically had the same thing. You had to be online all the time. Might and Magic 10 has DRM. I keep repeating myself. The twist is, at the beginning of June, the servers went down. That's right, they had servers specifically for Might and Magic 10. It might have been controlling some other DRM or whatever, but it was at least connected to M&M 10L, M&M XL. Which means that if you buy the game, you cannot finish it. You can't get past Act 1. Now, mind you, as of me recording this on the 24th of June, you can still buy it on Steam. In fact, it's on sale for $6.24 for the standard edition and $7.49 for the deluxe edition, the digital deluxe edition. However, the full price, which just a few days ago it was at, is $24.99 and $29.99 for a game that you cannot play anymore. They have decided to just leave it up. Now, the unfortunate thing is that when I was looking at the reviews, when you look at the reviews from even people back in May, all positive. From what I understand, game was pretty well received and well liked. There's people who have literally hundreds of hours in this game leaving positive reviews, which is a good sign. And then, but all the recent reviews, like within the last couple hours, or last few days, when this happened, when this was discovered, have all been negative. So a game that was previously a mostly positive, from what I can glean, is now a mostly negative on Steam. So in the recent reviews, 21% of the 32 user reviews in the last 30 days are positive. Holy cannoli. So in the last 30 days, only 20%. 32, what's 20% of 32? It's like 6 something? Yeah, it's like around 6. It's probably some percentages going on there. Some non-whole numbers going on there. Only like 6 reviews are positive, and I'm assuming that's from before this DRM shutdown. And all of the recent reviews are talking about the inability to play past Act 1. So we have a review here from Dubious Muldoon. Yet more proof that Ubisoft is an absolute garbage company. As of now, you cannot play past Act 1 without modifying the game files, because the server that this single-player game was connected to was shut down. But But if you have the DLC, you can't play it at all. Oh, what? Since the DLC required you to have connection to the servers for it to work. The DLC that is still being sold. Let's scroll back up. For about, the original price is $7. Currently on sale for $174. This company is an absolute joke, and I will never understand how there are people brain dead enough to actually defend them. Yeah, next review says, what I can play of the game is fun. The problem is the Ubisoft app. Oh god, it's the Reupload? I have the Legacy Edition and the DLC, and yet it just will not let me play past Act 1. I have tried to reactivate the keys multiple times. There's someone here who actually edited the review. Someone with 295.9, so 296 hours on record. Excellent game. Can't wait for the next in the series. Longtime fan of the playstyle. Edit. Ubisoft have disabled the DLC, making the game broken when you reach Act 1 end. It's now unplayable again and should never be bought until they fix the game. Yeah. I think everyone basically knows at this point that DRM is a really bad practice, but it also just doesn't work. One funny thing is it just doesn't work. You'll notice with, so when Mega Man 11 came out, here's a little case study. Mega Man 11 launched with DRM, and within like 5 days, it was removed. And this is something that Capcom, I don't know if they're still doing it, but that was their strategy, because all DRM does is it's a stopgap until the game gets cracked, and then once the game gets cracked, there's no point. DRM is utterly ineffectual, because it's going to get, if you want to, I don't know how many games today are launching with DRM, that are not server-based. Most publishers have kind of like toned down on single-player, non-online games having it. But if there are any, I guarantee you that I could go on Pirate Bay right now and probably find a crack of the game in like less than 5 minutes. People who want to will, and DRM is not going to stop anyone. And in fact, DRM actually encourages people to pirate the game because people don't want to deal with that crap. Because, what was the recent one? There was a game that launched with DRM, and it actually hurt the game's performance. It might have been DRM or Denuvo. They're both pretty bad. It hurt the game's performance because of the amount of CPU that it was taking up. And so the better way to play it was to pirate it so you didn't have DRM. People just hate the practice in general. It's ineffectual, and it makes games worse and encourages more piracy. I mean, they even say it in, I don't remember if they say it in that Metro article, but they at least say it in one of the reviews. You have to mod the game, or pirate it, if you want to actually play it. I can't believe it. This article went up on the 21st, and I'm assuming then it was, this was discovered at least 24 hours before then. Maybe even earlier. And here we are, 5 days, almost a week later, and Ubisoft still has it up on the store. They are selling you a product that you cannot play. Nowhere in here, like, okay, if you want to get legal, you could probably make an argument that if they said that if they disclosed, as long as you disclose things, no problem. It would still be horrible and scummy, and it sucks that this game is like unplayable. But if they disclose it, I guess you could say that it was legal. However, there is nothing on the store page to even suggest that it has this DRM lockout. It says requires third-party account, Uplay, supports linking to Steam account, and requires agreement to a third-party EULA. And that is it. That is all of the details. It has in the description, it's just a description of all the different versions, just the standard and the digital deluxe. And other than that, there is no indication There's no indication that you cannot play the game. This might actually be illegal. You might actually be able to sue someone in court. If it's not, it's highly unethical and extremely scummy. I don't think there's people defending this. I don't think there could be people defending this. All I can say is that I'm glad that this practice is not as common as it once was. This was definitely a thing back in the 2000s, or sorry, the early, like the mid 2010s. This crazy boogeymaning of piracy. We gotta put DRM in, and I think thankfully it's slowed down because it's extremely unpopular and also ineffectual. Again, it's literally just a stopgap. It does nothing to prevent the piracy of games. I want to take a quick break. Ba-ba-da-da, I'm back. Yeah, so DRM has no purpose. Even for what's so confusing about it is that, like, okay, the thing with used games, I can at least understand that if you want to squeeze more money out because you want people to pay you directly. But like, what does DRM offer to a publisher? Like, more control over the product? I have no idea. Because you don't get any extra money from it. Maybe in some really arcane, roundabout way you do, but I feel like it's people at the top level of management who like wealth a little too much. Being really freaked out about piracy and saying that, oh, we need to do everything to stop piracy because we're losing so much money. Like Mr. Krabs. There are people who really, they are so possessive of wealth that they do ridiculous, harmful things to keep it or to grow it for no real reason other than they like having it and they like accumulating it. It's like the intersection of greed and gluttony. Yeah, Ubisoft is generally kind of a shady company. I don't like supporting them. I haven't bought an Ubisoft game in maybe ever, actually. Probably have like once. Maybe when I was a kid. Yeah, I doubt that they really care about their games. I mean, when you pump out like a yearly Assassin's Creed game to the detriment of its overall quality, and what was the one? It was like Syndicate or something? Union? I have no idea. Whichever one launched, it's the famous one with the picture of like the NPC, but his like skin is gone, so it's just a pair of floating eyeballs and teeth. Someone who would crunch their company to put out a product like that yearly does not really care about the integrity of their games, but you shouldn't really be surprised by that. Moving on. This one was crazy. All right. This is an article from The Gamer, which I'm always conflicted on this because The Gamer, one, great name. You're right to the point with that one. The Gamer put out a lot of really not good is what I would describe it as. They put out a lot of not good content, like BuzzFeed level CBR type, just like junk food content. But this one, that's my only exposure to them is their like kind of whatever content. This article is a little more legitimate, and the title really caught my eye. This is from about a day ago, by Eric Switzer. The Sniper Ghost Warrior press event made me pretend to kill Arabs, and I hated it. Is it a subtitle or a it's a little descriptor below. A recent press event for Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2 highlighted just how casual American culture is about violence towards Arab people. So, for a little background, Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2, that's quite a name. Is the new game in this, is it the Sniper series or the Sniper Ghost Warrior series? Or the Sniper Ghost Warrior Contract series? I'm not entirely sure, but it's one of those. Developed by CI Games, which I believe is a Polish developer. And it's about sniping in the game is about sniping in a fictional Middle Eastern region called like Quamar. And so, which is totally fine. It's fine as long as, I like the, I really like the little like tactical role that they do, where we can't have you be in like an actual Middle Eastern country because that would be racist. That's gonna seem racist. So we're gonna have you in a fake Middle Eastern country. So you're shooting Middle Eastern people in like, but they're not like Syrian, you know, or like Yemen, or, you know, they're just they're in a fictional brown country. If you were to I like the idea that having the real problem is that we're shooting real Arab people. If we're shooting fake, let me rephrase this. The problem is the racist part is from shooting Arab people who are from an actual Arab country. It's okay to shoot Arab people, but not if they're from... Wait. It's okay to shoot Arab people, but not if they're from a real country. That's what I'm trying to say. I think the reason that it's so difficult for me to put my words together in my brain is because the line of logic in itself barely makes sense. Like, don't worry, guys. We're not in Iran. We're in Quamar. It's fine. Like, okay. Anyway, so CI Games invited a couple different writers and YouTubers to a press event for Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2. Now the press event happened, it was more like a celebration thing, because apparently the game already came out like the day before it happened. And it was like the review copies were already out, obviously, and the reviews were out. So it was just, I don't know, it was like a PR thing. So there's a guy, Eric Switzer, talks about what this event was. Now you would think, okay, well, it's an event to go to. They're going to sit you down, you're going to play the game, you're going to do whatever. And that happened a little bit. But the bulk of the event was actually taken up by this, it's called Incredible Adventures. Incredible Adventures is they're a company that basically do, I don't know what you would describe it as. They're a tour agency, is what they're described as. And they brought them to the Strategic Operations Facility. Strategic Operations Inc. is in San Diego, California, and it was apparently a film and TV studio built in the 90s, and now it's a tactical training facility for police and military personnel. And this particular event offered by Incredible Adventures offered a, quote, extreme military counterterrorism training to civilians, which is what the press and YouTubers were there for. So you read this and it's like, oh my god, it keeps getting worse. So you go in and it's a lot, and there's like mutt HUDs with like, it's dirt, and there's red barrels and benches, and it looks like the apocalypse. I really like this little line from the article. A series of nondescript yellow circles hang in one window, demonstrating that art does not exist in this society. A pile of rotten meat sits on a nearby table next to a decaying pig head, because the people here eat filth, apparently. So yeah, there's a picture of it later on where they literally have like, looks like prop meat just hanging there in the sunlight. Yeah, not it looks like propaganda. It looks like the image of like post 9/11 Patriot Act propaganda. Look at these people. Look how they live. Shockingly, all of this is pretty uncomfortable. There is a flag hanging on a pole. The flag says, there's a picture of this. The flag says, Trump 2024, the Revenge Tour. It's flying on the main building of the facility. Yeah, so regardless of what your political affiliations are, this is weird. Can everyone agree that this is a little weird? Like, you ever meet people and they're a little too into like one kind of thing? This happens with people on multiple sides of whatever political spectrum you meet, where like everything from like Twitter people to the guy with like 20 Trump Second Amendment bumper stickers. It's like, okay, you seems like your political beliefs are a big part of your personality, buddy. That's a little weird. So yeah, having that flag, Trump the Revenge Tour. Oh boy, you're like, okay, this is what this is. So basically they had, the purpose of the event was it's to show you what a real military sniper marines training is like, which I think is fine as a concept for your game. But I might just have to read this out. The event organizer addresses the group by welcoming us to a day of sniper training, but Tosh, who is leading the demonstration, I guess, I don't know what you'd call it. Tosh corrects him, quote, "Let's call it a sniper adventure." We break up into groups and spend most of the day learning how to breach a building, systemically move down a street while in hostile territory, and handle a weapon. We're each given an M4 rifle converted to fire sim munition, which has a similar impact to airsoft, and we practice firing them and running various military drills. Now, all of this seems fine, honestly. Like, just from that description, that seems fine. There's a lot of, like, pretty interesting training that Marines have to go through in order to be, like, beyond physical, just, psychologically prepared to go into a war zone. And if you want to, like, simulate, especially if your game is supposed to be a more serious take on a military theme, that would be kind of interesting. I can at least see where the idea comes from. Here we go. Here's where it changes a little bit, where you get some extra details. As we run drills, no one refers to the people we're learning to kill as Muslim, Middle Eastern, or Arab. Anytime the instructors refer to them, they say enemies, bad guys, or the other guys. Of course, it's impossible to ignore that the quote-unquote bad guys are most certainly Arabs here. At the end of the day, we run a combat scenario where we trade fire with role players dressed in white robes and, forgive my pronunciation, keffiyehs. The actors are all white, I think, and I can't decide what's worse. White people dressing up like Arabs to be shot at, or subjecting actual Arab people to this experience. Yeah, there's definitely a way you can do this that is a little less insensitive. So, like, one of the things that, like, Marines, especially, on deployment in a place like the Middle East, is one of the unique struggles or challenges they face is that people could be potentially dangerous who want to kill them, and they look just like other normal people, and are, they're dressed the same, and they're mingling amongst them, and it provides, it offers, let me rephrase this. It creates a very unique, morally challenging situation where, like, the people who might want to kill you might be looking like this. And so if you set up situations, like, how do you prepare for a situation like that? Where they could just be looking like all of the other people who are just normal. And don't want to be in a goddamn war zone. From this description, it seems like it's a little Let me read this quote. When the combat scenario starts, Tosh shows my team a map and explains the route we're going to take through the facility. He points towards the role players dressed like Arabs and says, quote, "Those guys over there have killed a lot of good Americans." Yeah, it's dancing incredibly close to being, well, depending on how you look at it, dancing close to or just being propaganda. There's definitely, like, I've always been really uncomfortable sometimes even hearing, like, law enforcement talk about, when they use terms like bad guys, it's like, okay, talk to me like I'm an adult. I'm not 7 years old. You can say criminals, bad actors. You can say, just don't talk to me like this. It feels condescending. It's like propaganda. One of the things that's so infuriating about propaganda is it feels like I'm being talked down to. It's like, I'm going to talk to you like you're a child because children are easy to indoctrinate into a certain ideal. And so it just feels like baby language, saying like they killed a lot of good Americans. Like if you're a little simple and you're a little child, or you're very impressionable, you think, oh, you don't see anything weird with the fact that an adult is talking to you like that, because that's how everyone talks to you. And so that can really rile you up. But it's very, that kind of phrasing is very rhetorical, not in the sense of like a rhetorical question, but like there's definitely, it's being presented to you in a certain way where it's making an argument. It's making a veiled appeal to your emotions. So you got to wonder, like, why is someone trying to appeal to my emotions? If you want to say, like, those people over there are terrorists. They are causing strife, and they're causing chaos in this community. There's innocent people being harmed amongst the people, on our side, people who are part of this community, like, our soldiers, as well as people who are just normal people in this area, in this village or this town or this city. And our role here is to stop them while preventing further harm coming to the local population. Like, there's an approach and a mindset that I think is a lot more, you could call it noble, that is really not being presented here. This is like an appeal to emotion, and it's very weird, and it makes me uncomfortable that you can, like, go and pay for an experience like this. I think if you are a soldier, your purpose there is to create a peaceful situation. Now, whether or not that actually is the case is a little beyond the scope of this podcast, and whatever, my knowledge is, and that's a conversation you can have with people on your own time. But I think unequivocally we can agree that this is bad, and these kinds of mindsets are very unsettling. So now CI Games released. I would feel extremely uncomfortable in this situation. Even just the overt political stance of the people there with, like, their freaking the revenge tour flag flying. I would be uncomfortable. And I'm generally a pretty apolitical person, not just in like the content that I produce, but in my everyday life. I would be uncomfortable because of the weird, like, are you trying to make me have an opinion type thing. So CI Games, this article came out, CI Games published an apology, which is, let me read it out. We were deeply disturbed to read the report from the Gamer website. I love that it's just called the Gamer website. The one, you know. Like, if you didn't know, you'd be like, what are you talking about? What Gamer website? With regards to the live event held to support the launch of Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2. Okay, so the official title is Sniper, subtitle Ghost Warrior, subtitle Contracts, :2. There's no colon, actually. There's just like a little line between it and the number, between contracts and the number. Just put like a colon or a dash or something, please. CI Games abhors racism of any kind, and as a Polish studio based in Warsaw, we have absolutely no affiliation with any U.S. political party or movement. Now that I do believe, I don't see why they would have a reason to affiliate themselves with a, like, U.S. movement of any kind. Although, from what I understand of Polish politics, they have their own funny business going on over there. I don't know if it's specifically about the Middle East, but, you know. It's a little bit of a side note. Sniper Ghost Warrior Contracts 2 follows a purely fictional narrative based in a purely fictional setting. Purely fictional, guys. It's fake Middle East. I mean, it's a fake desert. You can't say purely fictional and then say it's in the Middle East. You can't say purely fictional and say that it's in a Middle Eastern location, like a real location, because that's not purely fictional. Purely fictional is Destiny. Purely fictional is Halo. The alien planet parts of Halo. And even then, Halo is like the original game. The Halo is based on Washington. So I digress. Yeah, saying purely fictional in a fictional setting. You can say fictional narrative, although that is also, I mean, like, I think it's a little irresponsible and a little cowardly, honestly, and this is things that the games industry does all the time, to backtrack the influences, the real-world influences of your games. And it always happens with military shooters. It always happens with shooters. Not just military shooters. It happened with freaking the new Far Cry game. And I'm like, no, Castro's in there because it's fictional, guys. Like, if your game takes place primarily in a Middle Eastern war zone, and is released in the year 2021, I don't think you can avoid, you have to acknowledge, like, where did that come from? Okay, CI Games, where did that decision come from? Was it purely fictional? Anyway, we're trying very hard to ensure we are avoiding stereotypes or representing cultures in any negative way. Respect and tolerance are keystones of our company's culture, and we were distressed to discover that an event meant to be fun and engaging for participants had instead caused offense for some attendees. Yeah, that's a little bunch of PR spiel. Respect and tolerance are keystones. Yeah, avoiding stereotypes or representing cultures in any negative way. I don't know anything about the Sniper Ghost Warrior 2 enemies. I'm assuming they're all Middle Eastern. The launch event took place on an authentic military training base in San Diego and aimed to replicate how real U.S. Navy SEALs train, featuring standard military procedures and techniques. Which is fair. If you go in and that's your pitch, that's fair. It's really all about the implementation. You know, if you wanted to, like, show people about, like, how do guns operate? Tons of people play shooters. They have no idea how guns operate. It would be an interesting little view into, like, the training that's required to properly handle weapons. I don't know. Something like that. The intention was to give press and journalists a real-life taste of what it would like to be Raven, the game's protagonist, in a setting similar to that of Kuamar, the fictional region where the game is set. We had asked the events company to change the outfits of the enemies in order to match those that are represented in the game, which are specifically designed to avoid any direct or indirect cultural representations. okay, I understand. I understand the attempt. But here's the thing, is that the majority of Americans, you could show them an enemy that was based on an actual cultural representation. I don't know what that means. And one that was based off of what they say, something designed to avoid it. And they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. I couldn't tell the difference. All I know is that, like, if I look at pictures of people from, like, Iran, people from Syria, people from Egypt, honestly, to my little honky brain, they all look the same. Not in the sense of, like, literally, but, like, I can't distinguish. I don't have the knowledge or the familiarity to distinguish between things like different styles of cultural clothing or dress, or maybe even features that are, like, unique to certain countries. Like, apparently, like, different Asians can tell each other apart. I don't know how true that is, but they say they can. And it might just be bullshit. It really doesn't matter that you designed your enemies to avoid any direct or indirect cultural representations, because to a Western audience, it's the exact same thing. They would not be able to tell the difference. So that's kind of a moot point. Just be upfront that this is a game about being in a war zone, in an actual Middle Eastern war zone. I don't know how. This is why I would never make anything like this, because I have no idea how I would even go about doing this tastefully. It's incredibly difficult. But it's extremely common in games, which is weird. And it's really funny when you look at, like, the 7th generation, which is just packed full of Middle Eastern military shooters that were just totally derivative of Call of Duty, and as such really didn't pay any mind to what their presentation was implying, which ends up with a lot of really uncomfortable things from a lot of games from that era. Here's the kicker. We were informed that in order to preserve the authenticity of their training event, this request was denied. Okay. So, don't do the event then. If you care so much about not being offensive that you would ask that they dress more like the enemies in your game, and then why then, when that request was denied, would you just be like, oh, okay. I get the feeling you actually really didn't care that much, or you weren't thinking that hard about it. Yeah, you just pull the plug, and maybe just don't do it in the first place. If I had to run the risk between not doing an event at all and doing an event that makes me look racist, I would probably just not do it. Apparently the game was very successful in sales. I don't pay attention. I don't pay attention to this stuff, so I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know. Maybe find something different. Do a live stream. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, our team was unable to travel to the event from Europe, so we weren't able to engage directly in the running of the event. As a result, certain decisions were overlooked, and the event was conducted in a way that is not in line with our thinking or beliefs. Here's what you do. You make very clear when you're in negotiations with this company that you're contracting to do your event. You say, we need this, this, and this. If you are not able to fulfill that, we will not work with you. And I want proof that you're going to do it. I want you to say right now, and we're going to write a contract, that you are going to fulfill these requirements. Because this is a PR thing, and I don't want you to make us look bad. And if they can't fulfill that, or if they overlook, then do not work with them. If they can't guarantee that those things are going to be fulfilled before the event happens, just pull the plug. We would like to apologize directly to Eric Switzer from The Gamer and to any other participants who found the event offensive. No apologies to the, notice no apologies to anyone who was, like, I don't know, maybe Arabic. and might have been offended by the fact that they worked with a company that is very close to propagandistic of an anti-Arab sentiment. I don't know if that sentence was grammatically correct, but yeah, maybe like a public disavowment of some of the things that were presented there. Because it wasn't just taking a drinky. Because it wasn't just the fact that the enemies looked like Arab peoples. It was like the general presentation of what an Arab village or town looked like. It was the political, the very enthusiastic political flag that was flying on the main building. It was the general presentation of talking down and condescending in a very propagandistic way. Yeah, so CI games, I don't know, I had a lot of thoughts about this. It got my head moving. Gonna move into like some other stuff now. That's very bad, but to wrap up, before I move on, I should probably say something about that. Yeah, they screwed up. They don't care. I wouldn't support them. Well, the first reason I wouldn't support them is because I don't really care about the games that they're making. Second thing is, they seem stupid, and that's really dumb. Do I think that they hate Arab people? Probably not. I'm hoping not. But at the very least, they really didn't put as much thought. They were careless, is what I would describe. Careless. And, not reckless, but careless. Yeah, it's bad PR. Anyway, moving on to some positive things. Yeah, I've been putting a lot more time into Final Fantasy XIV recently. This is all personal stuff from here on out. So if you've even made it this far, and holy cannoli, I've been talking for for over an hour now. If you've even made it this far, then yeah. So I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV. Community is incredibly nice. I really like the. I'm a big fan of the job system. If you aren't familiar with the job system in Final Fantasy XIV, the way it works is its version of classes. Well, there are classes, but getting ahead of myself. Basically, there's like 10 or 11 or something like that starting classes, and then every class has a guild within each of the major cities, the 3 major cities. Basically like a representative. And then every 5 levels, you are able to take a new quest from your guild, which kind of advances you in the storyline. And once you get to level 30, you finish the class storyline, basically, and you get the opportunity to do a quest line that will upgrade your class into a job. And the jobs are the real classes. The jobs are more of the, I guess what you would call the iconic, they're the ones that really draw from the Final Fantasy history. So like that's where you actually get to play as warrior and dark knight and black mage and stuff like that. And the classes that those grow from are the kind of like made up, or the basic versions. So like conjurers become white mages, thaumaturges become black mages. But like what you're really there for is the Final Fantasy flavor of the being a black mage and stuff like that. Any character, so you can have one character and you can play every single job. Because the way that jobs work is that it changes depending on what weapon you're holding. Every job has a different type of weapon, like paladins have swords, warriors have great swords, black mages use staffs, the summoners use these like magic books, like codexes or indexes or whatever. And so just changing the weapon that you're holding will change your class or your job. And the game is very intentionally meant to be played that way, where you can have different gear sets for your different classes, jobs. It's interchangeable, whatever. And you can just switch between them on the fly with no worries. And each of them level individually, which is nice because you kind of get to figure out the class and level it. Each one has their own storylines. Really cool. I like the fact I generally like systems that are very free and open and allow you to, I guess it's sometimes it's referred to as in game design as like a fantasy or the core fantasy of something. And for me, something that's very appealing is being able to play a character in a cool role with like a cool type of gameplay identity and being able to like customize my character into that, specking, if you will. That's something that I've always found cool, that you get the choice to kind of build that yourself. You kind of get to build your character. And what's great is that you don't have to commit. You can switch off starting at level 10. You get the ability to just go over to a different guild, and you'll do a short, like literally talk to 2 NPCs, and you'll get the weapon for that class, and then you can just switch. And so I kind of bounced around a couple. I've finished like the main story quest of A Realm Reborn, which is the vanilla game, and I've been bouncing around a couple different jobs, seeing which ones I like and which ones I don't. I started as a summoner, which is a DPS role, a DPS caster, and they summon little guys. They summon basically some of the key summons from the Final Fantasy series. They always have a different name. Sometimes they're Espers, sometimes they're Aeons, sometimes they're whatever. Here they're called like Aegis or Aegis, I don't know, EGIs. And it was decently fun. I enjoyed it. I played through the main story like that. But I really think that the main DPS class that I've gravitated towards is Ninja. I was kind of looking for I was curious about Monk, because I've always liked fisticuffs, like brawler characters. But Monk was a little boring to me in that it was very, I don't know, it's based a lot around like switching between 3 different stances automatically by, you basically have like 3 different moves. There's 3 stances and then 3 different spells, and then using each spell changes what stance you're in, and then the abilities do more damage if you do them from a certain stance. So you're supposed to like combo them. It's designed very specifically so that you combo one to the next, and it's like a combo class. And that was like, oh, okay, that's kind of like a fighting game thing. I'm a little fighting game boy. But it ended up being a little boring, and from what I understand, Monk kind of suffers from having some abilities that just don't really do much. And that aren't used very much. So I was getting like these different kind of static buffs that you just toggle on or off. But there's only like one that I was actually using. So I was like, eh. The actual one that I thought was cool, that fulfilled that a lot more for me, was Ninja. Which of course, because I'm a little weeaboo too. And Ninja is really cool because it's based around this mudra system, and basically it's kind of like the hand symbols in Naruto. You have these 3 different mudras. You have it's like Ten, Chi, and Jin, and then you have an ability called ninjutsu, and ninjutsu changes depending on what order you use your mudras in. So like you use like Ten, Chi, Jin in that order, and you get like a water ability. But then you use like Jin, Ten, Chi, and you get, I forget what it is. It's like an AoE curse thing around you. And there's all these different, there's like 7, I believe, combinations. It's really cool, and I like how flexible it is. And you do your little mudra chant, and then you execute it with the ninjutsu ability, which changes. It'll like change to the spell that you have based off of your mudras. So that's been super cool. And then I found out that I really liked tanking, actually. I was playing a paladin, and I found it... Whoa, moving my arm, the arms of my chair up and down. I really like tanking, even though tanking is really stressful. If you haven't done a dungeon before, because FF14 is designed in a way where if you don't know the mechanics of a room or a fight, you will just die instantly. And sometimes it's come up a few times. I'm still, kind of in the Realm Reborn, figuring out like what classes I want to move forward with for Heavensward. So I'm just doing the more basic dungeons, but I've run into a few situations where, I just didn't know how that worked. Now we're all dead and I feel bad. But thankfully the community is extremely nice. They are very patient. They're very helpful. It's super weird coming from like other competitive games or online multiplayer games that I've played. And people are just nice, and they help you, and they tell you what the mechanics of a fight are. If you don't know, you can just ask. You can be like, how does this fight play? I don't know this. And they'll just like sit there and explain it to you, and people will be patient. It's super nice. And people are really encouraging. They say hey, like when you queue up for a dungeon and you get in with a party of, a bunch of randos. They go like, hey, what's up? Let's do this. And then at the end, everyone says GG's. There's like a player commendation system. And it's crazy nice. I've had a couple negative experiences, but really only one or two. And it's been massively outweighed by the amount of really cool interactions that I had. I was doing a dungeon the other day, and the way that the lighter dungeons work is that it's parties of 4 with 2 DPS, 1 tank, and 1 healer. And I was playing a healer. I was playing a scholar. And our tank just disconnected. And we were waiting for him to connect. And we waited like 5 minutes, so we eventually just kicked him and waited for the system to find us another tank, which took like another 5, maybe even 10 minutes. It was a while we were waiting. And in the meantime, we were just waiting in like one of the hallways in one of like the adjoining areas of the dungeon. And we were just chatting about like music. There was a guy, he's like, yeah, I've been listening to this, what is it, Architects, I think? It's like this British metalcore band. I was like, oh, cool. Do you usually listen to music while you play? And we were just having a talk about like just a super like neat casual interaction. So friendly, so positive and kind. I've been really enjoying it, and the community seems great. Refreshingly, weirdly nice. It's like, why aren't you calling me an idiot? Why aren't you yelling at me? Why aren't you getting frustrated at me? For the slightest thing, which would happen all the time in League. God, the amount of games where someone gives up first blood and one person goes, GG. And you're like, shut up. Oh my God. Like, I don't actually know what the stats are on, like, how often the team that gets first blood actually wins. But, like, actually, how often does that happen? I'll do some research and cut it out. Okay, so it looks like from the statistics, first blood is associated in League with like a higher win rate of about 60%, which is pretty high. However, you have to look at the flip side and say that 40% of games where enemies get first blood, you still end up winning. Quoting this Reddit user here. Which isn't like, first blood isn't like an unwinnable thing, but you just deal with that all the time. People just being really sensitive, I guess. It's so nice to just be in a community where people don't freak out over minor things. League is also just really good at building stress in people because of the time investment, and there's a lot of reasons that might be its own topic. But So my interest in MMOs, I've always kind of had an on-off interest in MMOs because the concept always seemed cool, but none of them were ever really able to hold my interest. Like I played some as a kid, some like the free ones that were started to get traction in like the 2010s with stuff like Wizard 101 and stuff. Pardon, with stuff like that. So I found out about. I was going through this kind of like Star Wars phase where I was really interested in Star Wars games again. I remembered about Star Wars: The Old Republic, the MMO, and I was curious about it. And then I found out about through research of that the other Star Wars MMO, the previous one, Star Wars Galaxies. I did some research on it, and it seemed like the idea of Star Wars Galaxies was so intriguing to me. It shut down in 2011. It was from like 2003 to 2011. And so basically Galaxies was, the idea was that it was a sandbox MMO, a pre-WoW sandbox MMO. Actually probably in like 2002, I think. So it's like as old as me. It's like a sandbox MMO where you were basically able to, it had kind of like a Skyrim progression system, to use a more well-known analogy, where basically like there's a bunch of different skills depending on like what kinds of weapons you use or what kind of activities you do, and you gain experience from doing those skills. You gain experience for those things by doing those things. So using rifles will give you marksman experience, and increasing your marksman experience, there's like 4 trees, and one of those is rifles. And you'll get like rifle and marksman XP, and then marksman XP can then be specialized into like a specific rifleman tree. And then you have basically these like classes that require a certain level of points. They have like the actual like classes they have prerequisites for levels of stats in different areas. So like to be a scout, you need so much marksman XP, you need like some XP in survival skills and all that. And you basically have to like create these classes out of the different trees. And I thought that was super cool. But the thing that really tipped my interest over the edge was the bounty hunter class. And the bounty hunter class is what it sounds like. But the super cool thing was you can take, if you're a bounty hunter, you can actually take bounties on other players and go and hunt them down in-game and PvP them. And if you kill them, then you get a reward. You like get to cash in your bounty. Like real players. I thought that was awesome. And so I was immediately looking into the legacy servers for it. And I came across Star Wars Galaxies Legends, which is, it's the most polished, probably popular legacy server, I'm assuming. And when I was looking into it, I started seeing all these terms being thrown around, like CU and NGE, and I was like, what do those mean? So I did a little digging on the history of the game, and you kind of know that something's wrong when the major phases of the game are not referred to by the actual expansions. They're referred to by updates, as in combat. CU stands for Combat Update. NGE stands for New Game Enhancements. So the game went through 3 major phases. Its original state, the combat upgrade, and then the new game enhancements. And each of these was radically different, in more or less. So what the combat upgrade did is, from what I understand, it changed the way the combat system works, to rebalance it, because it was a little messy and broken in a lot of ways, which seems fairly positive to me. And then a short while later, the new game enhancements released for it. And the new game enhancements completely changed the game. The new game enhancements were basically to make it like World of Warcraft, because WoW was popping off, and they wanted to capitalize on the success of WoW. And so Gone is the multi-class specking with like crossing different skill talent branches to create these unique hybrid classes. Gone is that whole sandbox aspect of character creation and character building. And now you just choose from 9 classes. And I was like, that is kind of lame. So I played a little bit of Legends, which is a post-NGE server. And honestly, it was pretty alright. I had fun. Of course, I picked a bounty hunter, but I didn't get nearly to the point where I would actually be able to take bounties on people. And I eventually dropped it because I was having fun with it, but I wanted to wait. I really was curious about this. It's worth noting that the combat upgrade preserved the original. I think there's like 32 classes, like across all the different combinations that they offered and like specs that they offered. There were 32 classes. That's crazy. That's super cool. The combat upgrade kept all that. The NGE totally changed that. And so I was like, I'm so curious about how this system works and how it plays. And I heard about this upcoming legacy server called Restoration 3, which aimed to do what in my head, it seems like, okay, one of the things that the NGE added was making it like World of Warcraft, added a bunch of like crafted content, as in like just stuff to do that was already there instead of just sandboxing your experience. And so you think about it, you're like, what if we could have the best of both worlds? What if we could have this cool class system and you have the cool multi-super customizable class system. You could have the fixes to the combat from the combat upgrade. And you could have all the content introduced with NGE. And NGE also introduced like space flying, which is pretty rad. Which I got to do in the Legends server, which is really cool. What if you could get the best of all worlds? And that's what Restoration 3 was. It was a kind of back-engineered way of, from what I understand, of combining all of these aspects together. And I was waiting on it to come out, and it came out last weekend, maybe 2 weeks ago. And I decided to hold off on playing it because of, I was like, it's going to launch and it's going to be busted and it's not going to work because the servers are going to get overtaxed. And there's going to be bugs that people are going to find in the first 48 hours. Let me just wait a few days. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Patches came out. Great, let me go play it. Servers are not as taxed. The hype died down a little bit. Okay, let's check it out. The system is really cool. The class specking system is really cool. I will give the game that. There's a lot of things that I think are really cool about this game. The combat. Well, let me hold off. Let me go one at a time. So yeah, there's a ton of customizability offered. The atmosphere is really rich in many ways. The music is great, for instance. The game is slow. The game has a very slow start. You get a vehicle in almost immediately because you have to traverse huge areas of land in order to get from one point to the other. And there is no fast travel. Well, there is, but like not from like one point. You can't fast travel from like one city to every other city. cities have like these little fast travel points of like, oh, I forgot what they're called, ports or something like that, where you're basically taking a little craft from one to the other. And not every city can go to every other city. Some of them have specific ones that they only go to. And also, not every planet, if you go to the starports, which are how you transport between planets, not every planet goes to every other planet. So, you have to... You gotta do some moving. You gotta do some traversing in this game. And I'm fine with that. I can sort of get around that. There's some other things like the UI is a little awkward. It's actually a little different from the one on the Legends server, which I preferred. Just being easier to use. But that really brings me to my last point, which is I am really not that interested in continuing to play this game. Because the ideas, again, are so cool. I really like the ideas. They could be so rad. I love being in this Star Wars universe, which they've captured pretty well, I think. The problem is, and again, when I'm talking about them, I'm talking about the original devs. The guys who are doing Restoration 3 they're just running the legacy server and they're integrating the content, which, props to them for being able to do that. So when you're talking about the game, it's really exciting and interesting, but it just plays so badly. It plays so badly. You can really feel its age, especially jumping from like Final Fantasy XIV to this. It's like, whoa. Ooh. And 14 came out in 2010, which is about 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. I think technically A Realm Reborn was 2013, but they're basically using the same engine as the original 14, which released in 2010. So like even the engine is a little old. Not outdated, it still works pretty fine and it looks good. To me at least. Some people complain about like the anti-aliasing. It doesn't bother me that much. But just like the way that 14 plays, like when you moving around feels good, using abilities once you kind of get used to like the cast times and all that, it feels good. Having like a 2.5 second cooldown between abilities is fine because it's designed around that. And there's a ton of like ones that don't go by that cooldown that you can kind of weave between. The game feels good. Like I click on things and the feedback is nice. And you go to Galaxies and it's like, whew, this game is from 2002. It is, you walk so slowly. Even your vehicles move, it feels slow. And that might be fine, I guess. It gets a little tedious because it's like, I just want to go from point A to point B. The combat is alright. It feels like it's all hotkey based, so there's no like basic like right click attack or anything like that. It's like you have a blaster and then you can hit your assigned hotkey for shoot. And that's kind of how it works. And then you have a bunch of different skills. In addition to that, it just, I don't know. There's things with like the presentation. You walk around and it looks like a Lego game. It looks like the NPCs are just glued to the floor. They're just standing there like statues with no idle animations. The environments are very like, there isn't a lot of like terrain. It's well, like there is, but a lot of it is just like flat. You can see the age in the visual design when you're looking at like a mountain range, and it's like, oh, you just pulled the polygons up. It doesn't really look like a mountain range. It looks like you just pulled some polygons up on the map. All of this I would feel okay getting over, but it's really just like, I played the game for like 2 hours. I feel like I made no progress. I don't know, man. I wish the ideas in it, it's like Pokemon for me. I like the ideas in Pokemon so much, and then I play it and I'm like, I can't do this. I play it, I'm like, man, I just wish that these ideas were implemented in a more fun way for me. I wish every game was made for me. Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame, but if it sounds cool to you, then absolutely try picking it up. Play on Restoration or Legends. Those are kind of like the main servers. I think there's also like a like vanilla launch version if you're curious about that experience. And pirating like the original is like no problem. And literally, I mean, no problem. Like Disney really doesn't care about you doing it because the audience is not nearly big enough to cause any kind of threat to like the Old Republic or anything like that. And they're obviously, there were legacy servers from what I was able to dig up from like news sites. There were literally legacy servers of this game within months, maybe even weeks of it going down officially. Some people really love it. Loved it when it was in its original retail form. But if you're at all curious, I'd recommend to go check it out. And maybe it will just really click with you. Other than that, the Final Fantasy XIV free trial basically gives you the entirety of the base game and the first expansion for free with no limitations. And yeah, it's great. It is not nearly as janky as Galaxies. Galaxies does have, yeah, that's the other thing, is it has this kind of like jank factor where like you summon your vehicle and just kind of like pops into existence. And it's just, I don't know, it shows its age. You can get over it if you're of the mind to, but I don't know, it's a lot of like little things for me that add up that kind of make it a little harder to enjoy it. The weird lack of leveling content. Like I can't even grind on enemies because they're all way higher level than me and they kill me in a second. Okay. The Legends had a very smooth, like the post-NGE, probably a lot more accessible if you go to like the Legends server because it's the leveling content is way easier to understand and get into, and it's like appropriately scaled. You level faster, you get new skills. It does feel like playing a WoW with a Star Wars type skin, and it's a lot easier to get into before you dive into the hardcore sandbox. I don't know if it's that hardcore, but I've played some hardcore like survival MMOs. Have you ever played Haven and Hearth? Throwback to Haven and Hearth, holy cannoli. Yeah. That's not a genre. It intrigues me, and then I try to play it, and then I'm like, wow, you gotta be really dedicated to this to get anywhere. And a part of me that like really likes that, because I like the idea of putting in a lot of effort into something to get somewhere. And but there's definitely a balance. I think Minecraft hits it pretty well, of like, if you do work, you will make progress, which sometimes is like not true for something like Haven and Hearth. All right, do I have any more topics to talk about? I'm coming up on like almost 2 hours. I guess I could fill out the rest of it with me talking about Guilty Gear Strive. Yeah, Guilty Gear Strive, really cool. The game is good. There's a lot of apprehension going into it because of mainly a lot of things were up in the air when you show off so much of your game as like a beta. And you have people with tons of Guilty Gear experience playing it, and it's really different, and it's like, are they going to be able to pull it off? And I can say that they have. And the game is really fun. It's extremely different. It's very different. And this is coming from someone who considers Guilty Gear XX ACPR to be like my main game that I have the most experience with, that I love. And Plus R is like a super hardcore fighting game. Like, it's extremely difficult and complex, and that's one of the reasons that I like it. And Strive, I think, is good that it's so different. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, basically Guilty Gear Strive, Guilty Gear, the long-running fighting kind of niche fighting game series, has its new entry, Strive, after about 7 years. The last entry was Exerd, which technically did get its last update in like 2017, but you know, it's been a while since there was a new Guilty Gear. And this one is very radically different in many ways. Previous Guilty Gears were very based around the core kind of loop of many characters revolves around like the game plan, you could say, the style, around combos that end in like knockdowns, and then once your opponent is knocked down, you put as much pressure on them as possible in order to loop your offense. It's a very offensive focused game. That makes it kind of difficult for some players to get into, because it's like, if you don't know, you can really easily get trounced, and where like you literally can't get up off the floor because you just keep getting knocked down in these like endless loops where you keep getting opened up after your wake up. So Strive they've done a lot of things to make it a little more accessible for newer players. The first one is that it's no longer based around knockdowns so heavily. It's more based around so-called neutral interactions, which are basically a little more Street Fighter-like, where most of the damage and the interactions happen in neutral, where basically it's about players trying to gain an advantage rather than keep the advantage, if that makes sense. The classic Guilty Gear style is about gaining the advantage and then keeping it as long as possible, but the advantage can shift really quickly. In Strive, it's more focused on gaining it in the first place, and to that end, like, a lot of combos, short combos, do a lot of damage in this game, and compared to previous entries. And the so the main action of the fight and the main interactions are coming less from you getting knocked down and then trying to block and get out of your opponent's pressure, and more from you trying to win the engagement where you properly bait out your opponent. And mind you, or, you know, bait out and condition and do all the classic fighting game stuff. And mind you, all of this stuff already existed in Guilty Gear beforehand. Things like neutral and playing footsies, all of that existed in Guilty Gear. It was just, it existed in kind of a different way with the games, the way that those games were designed. I like it. I like both styles. Strive is a lot more like Street Fighter in that sense. And I think one of the reasons Street Fighter is a little more accessible to people is that the game is generally played a little slower, actually extremely slow, compared to Guilty Gear. Even Strive. Strive is much more deliberate than previous games. And even it plays way faster than Street Fighter. And a lot of your damage is going to be happening in neutral, rather than the high pressure knockdown situations. At the risk of repeating myself, Strive has moved away from that, and I think it works. It's definitely, like, you can tell where the design has changed. A lot of characters had to be altered in order to fit that style. But the game itself has preserved a lot of the fun Guilty Gear stuff. The combo system was slightly limited in a way that I'm not super crazy about. In previous games, you'd be able to just, it was called gattlings, where you could just go from you could instantly chain from like a weak attack to a strong attack, or light attack to a heavy attack, so-called. So you could go like punch, kick, slash, heavy slash, and that's kind of the upwards chain, and you could go all of those into each other. And now that wasn't a great combo, but something like the problem is that I play a character that doesn't really work like that in most Guilty Gears, but something like a far slash or like a far poke or something like that into your the heavy version of your slash, into like, I don't know, or like a crouching slash as a poke, and then a standing heavier button, and then a special or something like that. And as it plays now, Strive's actually very similar to that. Or you would do something like you'd open up with like a jab, and then you would just scale it up into, you would Gatling that up into your heavier moves and your specials and all that. And Strive kind of limited that, where like you can do slash into heavy slash, and you can do punch into punch, and you can do like kick into your sweep. And the only thing, honestly, what you end up doing in every Guilty Gear game is you never do just like punch, kick, slash, heavy slash, because that's a bad unoptimal combo. So what it's done is it's kind of gotten you to it kind of cut out a lot of the fluff of way the previous combo system worked. And it's providing clear rules on like how to form combos, how to formulate a combo. I do wish that I would literally only make one change, and I would say that I wish that you could combo punches into kicks, because those are the two light buttons. I think that like slash and heavy slash are cool connecting to each other. That's fine. That feels normal. That feels natural. The fact that you don't get anything off of punches is weird, and I don't like it that much. You can combo punches into like command normals, which are basically where you press a direction and a normal. So you do like punch and then forward punch, for instance, but you couldn't do punch kick, and you couldn't do like punch plus a special. I wish that you could go punch into kick, because then you can do like punch kick sweep, and that to me feels a lot more natural, and like you actually get something, because there's some characters who literally don't get anything off of their jab, and it doesn't feel that great. I wish more things felt better. Overall, though, that's like one of the only gripes that I have. Other than that, the characters are super fun. The visual style is gorgeous. There's a ton. One of the nice things about Guilty Gear is that even though it's launching with a lot of people consider it a small roster of about 15 characters, every character in Guilty Gear plays extremely differently. And one of the cool things is that generally characters tend to be pretty deep, and so no two people will play a character the same way. Some people will, but once you get into like the higher levels and getting really comfortable with them, two people can take one character. Two people of the same skill level can take a character and play them totally differently, and that's super rad. And that kind of ties into what I like about very free open systems. There's many other things that are a little too nitty gritty and fighting game nerdy about its combo system that I love a lot. But they've done a really good job at like streamlining a lot of the systems. Guilty Gear is kind of defined by the fact that it has just a ton of system mechanics. And once you like understand how all of those mechanics work, like a lot of universal mechanics that every character has access to, once you understand how all of those work, and you can kind of like take a step back and like really see how this whole ecosystem is working, it's super rad, and it's so exciting. But it is a lot, and they've done a good job of taking some of those mechanics and not removing them, but kind of like working them into other mechanics. So for instance, they're really putting all their eggs, not all their eggs into one basket, but they're really putting a lot of stress on one of the series' like core features, which is like the Roman cancel. The Roman cancel has always basically been, you hit 3 buttons and you spend 50% of your meter to cancel out of any move, which basically means that you can combo things into other things that you wouldn't have been able to naturally, because you can just be like, I hit that, now I can act. Instead of having to wait for my move to like fully finish the animation, boop, I'm just going to be out of it, now I'm going to do this other move. In a very simple sense, that's what Roman canceling is. And Roman canceling has always been really cool, and they've really expanded it, and they've added things to the system that were previously other mechanics. So like Guilty Gear has this, Classic Gear has had this mechanic called dead angle attacks, which are while you are actively blocking a move, you can basically do a little parry counter, at the cost of like, I think also like 50% of your meter. It's basically like an aggressive defensive option, if that makes sense. It's like a get off me thing. And every character had a unique dead angle attack. Some were good and some were bad. And now they have just rolled that into, you do a Roman cancel while you're blocking, and you basically do, your Roman cancel will come out and it's yellow, and it basically works like a dead angle, where it's a get off me move. And it does remove some of the complexity of characters having unique dead angles and unique kind of these counter moves. That would give them a little bit of extra flavor, but honestly, like, I don't know, I'm fine with it because my traditional Guilty Gear character has always been Slayer, and Slayer has a bad dead angle because it's slow. So like I never use the mechanic. And I think, you know, they might have been looking at it as like, well, some characters having bad ones means that they just won't ever use it. So like, what if we just roll it into one that's into a different system and then make it the same for all characters so that people will actually be using this, instead of just like, oh, I don't have to worry about that. So they kind of leveled the playing field in terms of mechanics that way. I think stuff like that is super smart, and really cool. I'm really glad at how successful it is. It's a series that's always been in the underground and appreciated by the kind of niche hardcore community, but never really gotten its time in the limelight, even though it's been at EVO many times. It's always like the least popular game at EVO, which is unfortunate. But yeah, within like the first 48 hours, it had already eclipsed the peak concurrent player bases for SF5 and Tekken 7 on Steam, which is kind of crazy. The only game that I think has had a bigger launch than that was Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is another game by Arc System Works. So yeah, they're really on top of the world right now, and I'm glad. They've always been a great company. Well, I don't know, they made some weird games that aren't that great. But yeah, their good games are very good. And I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in Guilty Gear, or even, well, it's hard to like recommend it because it's a little expensive. I will say that if you play it and you're interested in playing it competitively and online, the online for this game is impeccable. It is perfect. Maybe like 5% of my games have been laggy at all. And beyond that, I've had no other problems. Now, mind you, it is highly recommended that you play on an Ethernet connection. For the stability. Speed is less important than stability when it comes to fighting games because they connect peer-to-peer. I'm playing with some quarters in my hand right now. That's the sound. If you can hear it. Yeah. Stability is more important, so prioritize having an Ethernet cable and such. But goddamn, when you have this game on a wired connection, you can play people up to like 250 ping, and it works. It's not great, but it's playable at least. And the great thing is that it doesn't introduce any input lag on your end, which is awesome. So you can basically, if you're doing a combo and there's a lag spike, no worries, buddy. Just do exactly what you practiced in training mode, and you're not going to get screwed over by a sudden lag spike. Awesome. I love it. Whoa. I just had like a weird leg spasm and I hit my desk. Yeah, so if you're interested in getting it as a competitive game, or you really want to try the series out, I would recommend it. I would say it does have a season pass coming up, which of course I bought. It's yeah, I would recommend it. The price tag is literally the only thing that I'm cautious about, because if you're really not sure about fighting games, but honestly, I've heard that people who I've heard a lot of testimonies from people who have never really been into fighting games or only kind of dabbled in them, having a lot of fun with it. And that's great. One of the nice things about Strive is a very high damage game, and one of the nice things about that is that, like, yeah, when you get blown out, you get blown out, but it's fast. And the ranking system is very good at keeping you around people of your same skill level. The ranking system is very good with this. It has a floor system where you can basically you can fight people on your same floor. You can't go below. You can't fight people below your floor level, but you can fight people above. And so when you're on your floor, you will be matched with people just in that floor. They're basically like a series of lobbies, if you can think of it that way, that are arranged by ranking. And so you also, because it's newer, it's new, and it will be newer. And if it keeps a fairly high player base, then you can bet that a lot of the low ranks are going to be populated, and you won't have to worry about the experience that a lot of people fear when getting into fighting games. And honestly, a lot of people I've had too, where you go in and you get walloped for like 10 hours and you're like, I just don't want to play this anymore. That, I don't think they've taken great pains with this lobby system to keep that from happening. It will probably happen like when you first start, because it's trying to ascertain it's trying to gauge your what rank it should place you at initially. But once you get put at your appropriate floor level, your games will probably balance out, which is super nice. And there's a ton of content coming out for it right now. Ton of starter content, ton of stuff, information being updated daily on Dust Loop, which is basically the go-to for all info on Guilty Gear. The Dust Loop wiki. It has literally every single character has a page with full breakdown of every single one of their moves, all the frame data if you care for that, all the damage values, and they have pages of combos. They have matchup charts that people are still, like, obviously figuring out right now. They have the strengths and weaknesses of every character, which again, all this is still being figured out, which is kind of cool. But Dust Loop is a great resource to go to. They have like pictures. Every move has like pictures to go along with it. Some of them even have like hitboxes with them. Really great. Ton of content to help you along the way and get you kind of up to speed on the core fundamentals of the game and how it works. A lot of people are put off by the fact that the story mode is just a 5-hour movie. That's its own topic, but yeah, the Guilty Gear Strive story mode is just a movie. And if you don't know, it's also the conclusion to like 20 years worth of games. So like, if you have no idea about Guilty Gear lore, then I don't know, maybe watch Wooly Versus's Heaven or Hell series on Guilty Gear lore. I think the final video came out like today, which is it's a great resource, even if his audio mixing's a little whack. I'm sorry, Wooly. I love you. Yeah, Strive, overall, I'm very happy with it. And I haven't had a ton of time to play it because I've been occupied by other things. What I have played, I've put a couple dozen hours in, and it is very fun. It is very fun. Maybe not a couple dozen. It feels like that. I usually play for like an hour or two at a time. Oh, 20 hours. Great. Haha. That's not a couple dozen at all. I'm a sham. But it's been a very fun 20 hours, so I look forward to playing it more. There's going to be tons of like beginner tournaments too. That'll be really cool. And because they're all online, they're all going to be free, so no worries. Yeah, I don't know, man. I always end up just shilling for Guilty Gear. Anyway, I'm going to be wrapping it here now. This is the first episode of what I guess I would call the Cellarcast or something. I don't know. I'll come up with a better name for it. That name sounds alright, actually. Anyway, this is kind of tiding over also because there won't be a video this week. So yeah, have fun, stay good, and I never have an outro. Bye.